All right, welcome everyone to today's Google Webmaster Central Office Hours Hangouts. My name is John Mueller. I'm a Webmaster Trends Analyst here at Google in Switzerland. And part of what we do is talk with webmasters and publishers like the ones here at the Hangout. And it looks like we still have some room. So maybe I'll just open it up for you guys for the moment and do a short tweet. What all is on your mind? Who wants to start with a question?
I've got one if no one else is ready to go.
Go for it.
Sure. So we had a technical SEO audit done on the site, and one of the things that came out was looking at Search Console and a number of 404s. It's building on something you said on Tuesday. I've been diligently working my way through setting up. So we're an e-commerce site, lots of dead URLs to old products. I've been working my way through finding alternative URLs for same products, different finishes, different brands, different sizes, but fundamentally the same product. The question is, should this be a good use of my time?
I think cleaning up issues like that is always worthwhile, but I suspect you won't see a big jump in rankings for making kind of this cleanup activities.
Okay, thank you.
All right, more questions. What else is on your mind?
We still have the same problem with the breadcrumb in search. I think I'm not sure if you got the mail like 2 weeks ago. I asked you if we had a problem with how the breadcrumb was being displayed in the search results.
Yes.
It was like continent, region, city, and then the hotel. I'm not sure if you got the mail or if it's still the same. Like we just don't know why sometimes it works, why sometimes it doesn't.
But you have the markup on the pages?
Yeah, the markup is the same. It's the same on all pages, and some of it works and some of it just doesn't.
Okay. So in general, that means our algorithms are trying to do something different than what you're trying to do. And those are things where we bring that feedback back to the team, but usually they're not able to like manually tweak that for individual sites.
Yeah.
It's kind of on the algorithmic level, and what they need to do there is work to improve the algorithms to handle that better. So that's usually not something they'd be able to like just make work better from one moment to the next.
Okay, but like, is there anything we can maybe do better? It's like maybe something. I checked everything with the search data testing tool, and everything is fine.
Yeah, I need to double check with the team on that. So I passed your note on to them, but I don't think I heard back on whether or not there's anything that you could do in the meantime.
One thing I'm guessing, like our sitemaps have been broken for like 2 months now, like no new sitemaps, which is not ideal.
That shouldn't be that much of a problem. So, I mean, obviously everyone wants to have great sitemaps, and they're definitely useful for us for crawling new and updated content. But if we're already crawling and indexing your content and just not showing it in the way that you'd like, then the sitemap file isn't going to be the one that's the reason for that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, let's jump through some of the questions that were submitted. Okay, if a quality rater assigns a low quality score to a website, will you take this into consideration when you launch the next algorithm update? If there are no manual actions, does this mean the quality raters have no impact on that specific website's rankings? Yes, that's the case. So we use quality raters to try to determine where we need to improve our algorithms, or to give them variations of different algorithms to see which one of these is the best one with regards to the relevance in the search results primarily, but in general we give them multiple ideas, and we essentially ask them which of these are better. And if a quality rater says, well, this website isn't really useful for this specific query, that doesn't have any impact on that website in the search results immediately, and it doesn't have any impact even after that algorithm is rolled out on that specific website. Because these algorithms, obviously, they're made for the whole web. They're not focusing on individual websites. But at the same time, if you think a quality rater, when they look at your website and they would say, oh, this is a terrible website, then probably you're aware of quality issues that your users could be seeing as well. So that's something I'd still think about and consider actually cleaning up. Our forums text editor uses deprecated font and align tags. So all formatted posts contain these tags. Is this a big disadvantage in terms of ranking? Should we update to another platform? That's perfectly fine. We don't use valid HTML as a ranking factor. We don't check for these deprecated HTML tags. That's totally up to you. Sometimes using deprecated HTML means that it's not displayed well everywhere on all devices. I assume with these specific tags, it's less of a problem with regards to displaying the content on all devices. So if you're happy with the way things are working on devices, then you can definitely leave it like that for the moment. Should I improve quality of my page? And when I improve quality of my page and users notices, how long until Google notices this and improves the quality of my pages? And how long until Google takes that into account on the whole domain level? That's hard to say. I don't think there's any specific timeline that we'd have available for that. In general, if you improve the quality of your pages, then there's always this indirect effect that takes place where users love your pages and they recommend it to other people. And with those recommendations, we might find more links and pick that up and show that appropriately in the search. Let me just mute you, Max. Feel free to unmute if you have any questions or comments. So there's this kind of indirect effect with regards to improving the quality of your pages. And that's not something where there's a specific timeline on that. And across a whole website, obviously, there's also the factor that we don't crawl a whole website on one day. We have to crawl that incrementally. We'll crawl some pages more frequently, some pages less frequently. And it'll take time for us to re-understand this website over time. So that's not something where you'd have any kind of like a countdown that we would run to update our search results based on changes that you've made on your website. There's essentially just this organic time that it takes for everything to update. We lost half our rankings after an algorithm update, probably Panda. And other sites that copied our content started ranking above us. Will Google restore our rankings, copy pages by others when we fix all of the search quality issues? In general, we will try to take that into account when we see that a site makes significant changes in the quality of its pages. So that's something where I suspect you'll see positive changes. It's almost never going to be that we will just restore the previous state, because things evolve on the internet, things evolve in our algorithms, and any previous state will be different when you look at it now. So even if nothing happened with your website and with our algorithms in the meantime, the rest of the web will have evolved. So that previous state might be different from the new state that will come up. So that's something where sometimes we see this question with regards to short-term changes, but sometimes we also see this question with regards to long-term changes, where it's like 3 years ago, my site was ranking at this position for these queries. I fixed the issues that were involved. Will I rank like that again? And obviously, especially over a longer period of time, like a couple of years, the web will have evolved. Things will have changed quite a bit in search. Is it true that sometimes a domain name is never going to recover and will always have some kind of manual or algorithmic penalty against it, no matter what you do to correct any previous issues? plus no matter how helpful user content you keep adding. I don't know. It's hard to say, but for the most part, this is not correct. So pretty much everything that's associated with a website can be updated, and our algorithms can take that into account. For some things, it just takes much longer than for other things. So the never is, I would say, would be wrong here, but it's not the case that any issue that you run across on any website, if you clean that up, then within a short period of time, you will see positive change. Sometimes it does take quite some time. Sometimes it can even take years for that to kind of resolve itself. My client has set the expires header to a date from 2 decades ago and set the cache control header to no cache for pages that are updated on a daily basis. Does this affect crawling and indexing of my pages in any way? What should we do? I'm not sure what you should do. That's kind of up to you. Essentially, this is something that's more relevant for the client side. So users would take these headers into account, and they wouldn't use their cache. So that's something where if you really need users to update their cache every time they visit your content, then maybe this is the right thing to do. On the other hand, if you have mostly static content and you use cache control headers that essentially prevent users from caching the content, then they'll have to fetch that content from your server every time, and that might slow things down. The one place within Google where this might play a slight role is when it comes to embedded content. So when you're looking at things like JavaScript files, CSS, images, anything that's embedded within a web page, when we render those pages, which we do for essentially every page that we crawl, we'll try to get that embedded content. And if we see that we can't cache that, then we have to fetch that again as well. So that's something that might slow things down. So for example, if you're sure that your JavaScript page files aren't changing that frequently, maybe you could set a higher cache time frame there so that we can cache these files a little bit longer. That doesn't affect the crawling and indexing of the HTML pages themselves. It's really just for the embedded content. We build one of our client websites here, and then we park this domain. Both are using the same cPanel. Will that be a problem for SEO? So those are different domain names, as far as I can tell, or different host names, at least. So on the one hand, you have fencing.realclickstaging.com, and the other one is fencingmanufacturers.com. They're different domain names, they're different sites, so we wouldn't take that into account. That wouldn't be an issue from our point of view. What is sometimes an issue when it comes to parking content on a site is if within the same domain or the same host name, even we see some parts that are parked and some parts that are kind of live sites. Then that makes it really hard for us to determine, is this generally parked? Should we kind of ignore this site? Or is this generally a live site, and should we take all of this content into account? So particularly, we've sometimes seen cases where the www version is actually a parked version of a domain, and the non-www version is the actual site. And we'd look at that and see, well, www is parked, therefore maybe this whole site is parked. Maybe we should ignore it in the search results. So that's something you probably want to watch out for. In this case, it doesn't look like that's really happening. Those are completely different host names. If they're on the same server or not is essentially irrelevant. But we should be able to tell that these are different sites and treat them differently. Our client is selling various types on supplement on his website. Some supplements are muscle recovery supplements. Some are pre-workout. Some are men hormone supplements. Selling these types of supplements will affect his organic ranking. if you're trying to sell these products and you have them on your website, then ideally we would show your website in the ranking for those products. So that's not necessarily something where I'd say you have some, I don't know, I'll call it shady content. In an extreme case, you have some shady content and you have some good content, then that's not necessarily something I'd say is really a problem. It gets trickier when it starts looking like the site is actually hacked, where you have some content that looks completely normal and some content matches essentially what people tend to put on hacked websites, maybe pharmaceutical spam, that kind of stuff. Then sometimes our algorithms look at that website and say, well, some of this looks like a normal website, and some of this looks like a hacked site. What is actually happening here? Maybe we should flag these individual URLs that look like they're hacked because they don't really fit into that site. Maybe we can't separate that out, and we flag the whole site as hacked. So that's something kind of to keep in mind, that your website should kind of work together as one piece, I think. Is there any chance that the keyword planner will be added to Search Console soon? What about the rumors that this tool has restrictions for users without an active campaign? So the keyword planner is a part of the AdWords toolset, and I don't really know the details of what they're specifically doing. And from a Search Console point of view, I'm not aware of that being actively integrated into Search Console at the moment. I've seen some feedback on the web, on Twitter about these tools, and I passed that on to the team, so they're aware of kind of the worries or the difficulties there. But as far as I know, there haven't been any decisions made in that regard. Can we trust bots to correctly determine the document outline of pages using HTML5 sectioning content? For example, can H1 elements be descendants on the doc outline, or are they generally treated as top level? For the most part, we don't do anything special for HTML5. So we try to parse the HTML that we get from rendering the pages, and we use that to try to figure out which parts of these pages are relevant, which parts of these pages add more context, and take that into account. But it's not the case that we would say, well, HTML5 is unique in this specific way, and we expect pages to comply with the HTML5 standard. We essentially have to take what we get. And like I mentioned in the beginning, we don't require HTML validation. So sometimes we'll be able to figure that out better. Sometimes it's a bit trickier. I submitted Sitemap on Webmasters in Webmaster Tools, I guess, 10 days ago, containing 3,000 URLs, and it's still processed, only 80 of them without any error. How much time does it usually take to process and index all URLs from a sitemap file? There is no time frame for that. We don't guarantee crawling and indexing of all URLs. We don't guarantee that from a sitemap file. We use various factors to determine how much of a website we crawl and index, and that applies to URLs that are submitted with a sitemap as well. So just by submitting a sitemap doesn't mean we'll be able to kind of go off and crawl all of that content. Ideally, we'd be able to crawl your website. We'd be able to recognize that it's high quality, unique, and compelling content, and take that into account and say, well, this is something that our users have been waiting for, or that we know users are keen to find, and therefore we'll spend more time on crawling and indexing the website through normal crawling, but also through sitemaps crawling. So again, there's no specific timeline there. Your best bet there is really to make sure that your website is as awesome as it can possibly be. And from a technical point of view, make sure that we can actually crawl it within a reasonable time, so that the server has a low response time and low latency, is able to respond to requests fairly quickly, so that when we do decide to crawl, we can easily crawl, I don't know, 1,000 URLs a day from your server without causing any issues. Google seems to be moving towards constantly updated content and changing text. For a static website, this content will be staying the same. What would be the best SEO strategy for Google long term? We don't require constantly changing content. So it's really kind of up to you what you want to do. Sometimes we notice that for specific queries, users are looking for more fresh content, more new content. But sometimes for the same queries, we notice users are looking for more static content, more reference content. So it's definitely not the case that you need to artificially make your pages look like they're constantly changing for those pages to show up in the search results. We essentially try to take what we find on the web and look at what users are searching for and try to match that so the relevance works. For example, if some topic suddenly ends up in the news because people are talking about it everywhere, some event happened there, then maybe we'll start showing newer content there. But on the other hand, over time, when that settles down, we might say, well, people aren't looking for new content anymore. They're looking for reference material or more static type content, more evergreen content. And we'll try to show that in the search results. So my recommendation there would be to find your niche and make sure that you have something that's really awesome and fantastic on your website that works for that topic that you're focusing on. And try not to kind of artificially make it look like something else, but rather kind of really stick to what you're able to do really well and make sure that you can do that very well. There are two pages whose URLs are similar, but each cover independent needs with original content and has a self-canonical. However, page A is indexed, and page B is indexed as page A. It seems Google takes B as a dupe of A. Any suggestions to index them both? It's hard to say without looking at the specific URLs there. One thing we do in some of these cases is if we can tell that these pages are essentially duplicates, we'll try to treat them as duplicates. So that's one thing that might be happening here. Another thing that might be happening here is if these URLs use parameters in the URL. And within the parameter handling tool, we either show you that Google has determined that these parameters are irrelevant, or you have kind of submitted that these parameters are irrelevant for us. And maybe we'll say we'll crawl these URLs as one URL. So that might be another thing that's happening there. So in general, my recommendation there would be to, first of all, make sure that these pages are really unique, that they provide unique value of their own, that they're different from a content point of view, from a targeting point of view, and also make sure that we can actually crawl and index them separately. So double check the parameter handling tool, double check maybe from a technical point of view the internal linking on the site, that both of these are actually linked. That's not the case that you're just linking to one of them. Double check the canonical as well so that they're really set individually. What's the impact of AMP to an article website and an e-commerce website? Good question. So AMP is a way of providing your content in a way that is really fast to display for users, in a way that can also be cached on content delivery network. So these are things where we can try to take this AMP content and show it in a slightly different way in the search results. The impact at the moment is really that we're taking this and showing it in the search results slightly differently. We're not using it as a ranking factor at the moment. Because of the way AMP is set up, there are certain limitations with regards to the type of content that this works best with. And usually, at the moment, that's more the static type content. So for example, an article website, that would be something that would probably be better suitable for something around AMP. An e-commerce website, on the other hand, would be something that's probably less suitable for AMP, just because of all the dynamic elements that are involved there. Google will treat low-quality pages if we change major part of the website indexed URLs page structure. Not really sure what this refers to, so I don't really know what I can answer there. I have a question regarding machine-generated content. Does Google have publicly available guidelines on what's acceptable and what isn't? How can publishers leverage artificial intelligence algorithms to write content and not get punished down the line? So in general, our guidelines are pretty clear in that automatically generated content should not be indexed. So that's kind of like the first step there with regards to what is acceptable from our Webmaster Guidelines and what isn't. With regards to using artificial intelligence and algorithms to create content like that, from our point of view, you can definitely do that. We just recommend that you don't allow it to be crawled and indexed. So that's kind of the line that's there. If you want to provide this content to your users within your website so that they can kind of click through it and find that content, that's perfectly up to you. But if you want that content to be indexed in search, then that would not be OK. Search Console reports some 404 errors which were never created on site and also are not getting created by any means, JavaScript, etc. How is Google finding these? If we check the linked from, then it shows no linked from pages. And it continues here. For example, URLs for 404 pages which have no linked from pages. For example, www.example.com/Apple App Association. OK, so I guess these are kind of two different questions. On the one hand, we do find URLs in lots of different places on the web, sometimes within JavaScript on your site, sometimes on other sites. Sometimes they're linked within user-generated content. Sometimes they're found within text files as well. So this is something where we discover URLs in lots and lots of different ways. And our systems are curious, usually. And if we think there's great content on your website, and maybe there's even more great content on your website, then we'll try to crawl those URLs to see if we can find something fantastic there. So that's kind of the first step there. Essentially, if you see these 404 errors for URLs that don't make any sense, that don't really exist on your site, then that's a sign that we'd love to get more content from your website, essentially. With regards to that specific URL that you mentioned, the Apple App Site Association, I believe that's a specific URL related to app indexing, which means our systems are essentially just double-checking to see if your site has this URL on the web server, because that would let us know that maybe there's an app associated with your website and that we can index it together with your website. So that's something where we're just double-checking that file, kind of like we double-check the robots text file to see if there's anything there that we need to watch out for. And we use that to figure out, is there an app associated with this site? And if so, maybe that's additional content that we could be showing in search results as well. When do you plan to incorporate the new schemas from schema.org 3.1 into your structured data testing tool? I don't know if there's any official timeline on that, but I have seen the team talk about that. And I imagine they're getting ready to implement that as well. So I don't know what the usual time frame is there with regards to schema.org updates and updates in the testing tool. But we do know that these change from time to time, and we try to make sure all of our tools adjust to the new updates. We have two different product pages. Like one product is 3000 series, another is 3001 series, and both having mostly the same content. How does Google treat these pages? If they're different pages, we treat them as different pages. If they're mostly the same page, then in general, what will happen is we'll index both of these pages. And if someone is doing something like a site query for your website or looking for that series of products in general, then we'll pick one of these to show because they're just so similar. But if someone is searching for something unique to one of these pages, we'll try to show that specific page as well. So we'll probably recognize that there's a block of text on this page that's duplicated across these pages, maybe across even more pages. And if someone is searching for something within that block, we'll try to find the most relevant of these pages because the same block is everywhere, and they're just as relevant, essentially. But if someone is searching for something unique to one of those specific pages, then we'll try to pull that out. So that's generally not something you'd need to worry about. We're online Java training portal, and we have questions which are similar looking, but which are different. What's the best way to index them? Should we have only one page, or should all of them point to the same route canonical? Essentially, this is up to you. So that's something where you can kind of look at this from a more general user-facing point of view. Do these individual pages add value of their own, or are they essentially variations of the same thing? And if they're just variations of the same thing, then maybe it makes sense to fold them together. On the other hand, if they're really standing on their own, then maybe it makes sense to just keep them separate. It's kind of the same where if you had an e-commerce site, you would probably put each product model on a different page. But if you have variations of the same product, then maybe you would pull those together. So maybe you would have one page for one shoe model and all of the different shoe sizes and colors on that page as well as options. On the other hand, if you know that someone is looking for a very specific shoe model in one specific color scheme, which is really, really popular, then maybe you would separate that out and say, well, this page is really important on its own. It's the same shoe model as somewhere else, but it's that really important color scheme that everyone is looking for. Therefore, it makes sense to separate that out. So that's something where you kind of have to look at it from a user point of view. Does it make sense to fold these together? Are these just different variations, attributes of the same thing? Or are they really unique items? When it comes to questions from forums or user-submitted questions, for the most part, you probably want to keep them separate because they are different and unique questions. But it's hard to tell for sure how that would be in your specific case. Will Google treat a website as low quality if we've changed a major part of our URL rewrite? Just looking at the URLs themselves would probably not make us kind of make any kind of a quality judgment. So if you're changing the URLs, then that's something that users would probably see more, and it would have more of a technical effect on our side in the sense that we have to recrawl all of your website to understand the context of all of the individual URLs again. So that's more, I'd say, from a technical point of view, it's tricky and something you'd need to watch out for, but definitely not something that we'd say, well, from a quality point of view, we think your website is a lot better because you have a different URL structure. That I don't think that would really make sense. Are AMP pages in mobile going to get a ranking boost? I can't speak for the future. Everything can change, and I know teams are working to make lots of changes anyway. With regards to AMP pages on mobile in general, AMP pages are essentially mobile-friendly by default. So if you have, let's take an extreme example, if your whole website is on AMP, then we would see that as being mobile-friendly, and we would give you that mobile-friendly ranking boost. On the other hand, if you already have a mobile-friendly page and you add the AMP pages in addition, then nothing really changes there. They're still mobile-friendly. You still have that mobile-friendly ranking boost. Kind of the fact that there are AMP pages there additionally doesn't give that site any kind of a ranking boost. Obviously, that could change in the future. It's really hard to say at this point. But in general, we do try to make sure that the search results remain relevant, and we show something that's useful for the user. So sometimes that can make sense to have a ranking change there. Sometimes it doesn't make that much sense. Why being on position 1 for a query? The content is high quality so that it's first position. Google shows the different website with featured snippet for the same query. Ranking algorithm for both are different. One website with 6th position getting all CL. I'm not really sure what you mean here. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, hi John. Just a few minutes back I joined this. Actually, the thing is, John, that for some queries we are ranking on first or second position, but some websites are just using, you can say, table data or just in bullet points data. And after some time, we see that they are coming up for the same query, they are showing as featured snippet. So my point was that we are already using best content, but not in tabular form or not in bullet point form, while they are only using the data into this form and just coming higher than us.
Yeah. I mean, we use a lot of factors for crawling, indexing, and ranking, so it's hard to say what you should be doing differently in a case like that. When it comes to featured snippets, we do sometimes show results that are not the first in the normal search results as well. So that would sometimes be normal, that you would see another site getting a featured snippet while your site is essentially ranking first there. So that's something that can sometimes happen. Obviously, that can also happen in a good way for your website. If you're not ranking #1, then we could sometimes show your site as a featured snippet, despite it not ranking #1. So that's something where sometimes it makes sense to look at your content and think about what you could change there to make that more relevant for easier pulling out for a snippet. But sometimes that's essentially just a difference in the way that different websites kind of handle the same problem.
So John, can you tell me what factors are helping us in ranking as featured snippet? Depend from any algorithm factors or?
Um, I don't actually have any ranking factors that will get you kind of guaranteed a featured snippet. So yeah. We've talked about that with the team a few times, and we've discussed like maybe we should have a structured data markup that people can use to get featured snippets. But for the most part, the team is happier to kind of organically take the content from a website and show that as a snippet as appropriate, rather than rely on webmasters adding even more structured data markup to the pages, where they're already kind of getting overburdened with the different markup types out there. So ideally, we'd just be able to pull that out organically from a website and show that like we show any other type of snippet in the search results.
OK, thanks.
Can you add third important point in SEO? First is speed, content, and next is I don't think we have something as simple as the top 3 ranking factors that you need to focus on. I think speed and content are definitely good things to look at, but there are lots of things that we use to try to determine the relevance for specific queries. So my recommendation there would be not to focus so much on individual items, but rather make sure that as a whole, your website is really providing the best value it can possibly provide. So that's something that's obviously harder to express in any specific factors. But oftentimes we'll see that websites try to focus on technical elements or try to focus on one specific factor and kind of lose track of the bigger picture, namely that users want to find something that's really fantastic for them, that's easy for them to use, that gives them additional value, that is of high quality. So that's something where I'd recommend not just focusing on individual elements, but rather taking a step back and looking at things overall. We recently flew out of the index before 2 days with our complete.de domain and their main page and product pages. We didn't do any changes. We don't know the reason for that. Are there currently any changes or testings happening, in fact, of redirects? It's hard to say what might be happening there. In general, one thing I try to figure out is if this is something that's kind of an immediate change that happened, or if it's something that happened more gradually. If it's something more of an immediate change where really the whole website disappeared from one day to the next, then it sounds like that might be some setting that you have, maybe with the URL removal tool that you accidentally remove the whole domain from the search results. On the other hand, if you're seeing more of a gradual change, then that sounds more like something maybe technical on the website where we're having trouble crawling and indexing it properly, and we're kind of dropping the most important pages quickly, and then kind of you see this kind of gradual curve of the rest kind of disappearing. And that's usually something that you can control a little bit better on your side and try to figure out what is happening there so that it kind of comes back again. But if you can't figure out which of these it might be, I recommend posting in the help forum and getting some advice from other people who can give you some ideas on what settings you should look at, what things you should test. And they're usually also able to escalate that to us if it's really something where something totally unexpected is happening that nobody's able to figure out. Does Google really rely a lot on the Moz DA? My Ahrefs ranking is pretty high. However, Moz takes a long time to index my backlinks. I've been creating backlinks since 22 days ago. Also, I see a lot of bots coming to my website. Is that bad? So where do I start? We don't use the Moz tool for crawling, indexing, and rankings. We don't use Ahrefs either. In general, sometimes it makes sense to use third-party tools like those. Some of these tools are really great for kind of diagnosing issues on a website, understanding a website properly. But they're third-party tools. They're not associated with what Google is actually doing. With regards to building backlinks, in general, I'd recommend making sure that your backlinks are organic, that they kind of grow on their own rather than that you go out and build them. Because if you're going out and creating these backlinks, we would see those as unnatural links, and they might cause more problems to your website than they would actually help. So that's something I definitely avoid doing. So taking a step back, looking at this question, I'd recommend making sure that your website as a whole is really the highest quality possible, that you don't focus on creating backlinks manually, and that you use these third-party tools in a way to improve your website and to understand your website better from both a technical and from a quality point of view. But keep in mind that these are external tools. They're not used by Google, so they should help you understand your website better, but they're not something that would be indicative of anything that Google is going to do with your website, with your content. Will Googlebot crawl the content or text which is used in JavaScript tags? If we can crawl the JavaScript files, we'll try to crawl them. So crawling from that point of view, probably we will crawl that. With regards to indexing the content, that depends a bit on the pages. If we render the page using that JavaScript and that text appears on that page, then we'll try to take that into account for indexing. On the other hand, if we render that page and use the JavaScript file to kind of render the page, and that text is more like a comment within the source code, or is something that's not actually displayed on the page when the page is rendered, then probably we won't take that into account. Does the order of hreflang tags matter? No. The order doesn't matter at all. One thing I would just watch out for if you're using hreflang tags within the head of your pages is make sure that those hreflang tags are towards the top of the head so that we're sure to take that into account. Because if they're lower in the head, and especially if you use JavaScript to kind of modify the head in any way, then there's a chance that they will essentially slip into the body when we render the page. And if they're in the body of your content, we can't take them into account as hreflang tags. But the order, which languages you put first, it's default first, or kind of English first, or French first, or whatever, that's totally up to you. That's not something we care about. In featured snippets, there are a lot of fluctuations recently. On the same query, it appears, and after some time, it doesn't. Also, the results in featured snippets are changing quite frequently. Any updates on this? Our algorithms are constantly changing, so I think it would be normal to see fluctuations with regards to featured snippets like that as well. So that's not something where I'd say there's anything special you need to watch out for. How to participate in a live blog. We've implemented all the guidelines for the same, including schema, design, etc. But it's not working in search because it's open for initial providers. Rest of schemas work on our domain, for example, ratings, news article, recipe, etc. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe for some of these early features that we have available there's a form in the developer documentation that you can use to submit your site for review by the team. And for some of these features, we're still kind of figuring out what the final setup will be and how we will show these in search. So it's kind of limited in the display. But if you've already set that up, then let us know about that through that form. If you can't find that form, you can also send it to me by Google+, and I'll just forward that on to the team. I can't promise that the team will be able to take that into account. For some of these features, they get a lot of submissions, but they still sometimes they want to limit things a bit to make sure that it's all really working the way it's expected before they open it up to a broader audience. Should we avoid placing primary page content in tabbed or expandable modules on a page, as it may be discounted by Google, even though it may provide a better user experience? So from the question, it sounds like you already know what we've been talking about, namely that if this content isn't visible when we load the page, then we assume that it's not the primary content. So if it's really primary content for your page, for your users, then that's something I'd make sure is really up front and center when people actually open these pages. So from that point of view, if it's the primary content, make sure it's visible as the primary content. If it's not the primary content, if it's just additional content that provides some additional value, then maybe it makes sense to keep them in a tabbed section or some section that's not immediately visible. If this is really important content that you do want to make sure that it's indexed separately, then it might make sense to actually make a separate URL for that content. Generally, Google doesn't want us to use one domain to one city. Recently, one website was targeting, and it was duplicate content. Only the name was changed. So he was not able to use any hreflang. And also, the cache of one website was coming out of the other website. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, John. Actually, someone from India was just having different cities matrimony website, basically, like BangaloreMatrimony.com or DelhiMatrimony.com. So he told us that only one version of his website was indexed and other versions were not indexed. So obviously for each city it is not recommended to use one domain, and the
Yeah.
website was duplicate. But we were not able to tell him how to deal with this except saying that please have only one domain.
Yeah. We would see that essentially as doorway sites. So
Okay.
from a technical point of view, we try to recognize that all of these belong together and just pick one of them to index. From a web spam point of view, if the web spam team were to take a look at that, they would probably remove all but one as well. So that's something where you really need to make sure that you have one website with your content so that you're really kind of focusing on one website. I think from a marketing point of view, from a general SEO point of view, that also usually makes more sense because then you have one domain which you can build up, which can be really, really strong, rather than all of these individual domains that you have to maintain separately. So that's something that kind of from multiple points of view makes sense to fold everything into one thing instead of keeping them on separate sites.
Okay. Thank you.
Search results pages on a real estate website sometimes return very similar listings due to properties being located in neighboring suburbs. Does this count as duplicate content? And how can we improve our relevancy signals for Google to avoid duplicate content? So we would probably look at these pages and say they're not completely duplicate. So we would index these pages. But we would recognize that individual blocks of text are duplicated across these pages. So we would probably pick one of these pages for indexing or for showing in the search results rather than all of them. So ideally, on the one hand, I'd make sure that you're not allowing random search results pages to actually be indexed, but rather that you're providing a kind of a category page experience, essentially, so that you really know that the URLs that you have indexed are providing unique value of their own and really work together like that. The other thing that we often see with regards to search results pages is that you can enter any possible search query, and it'll create a page for that. And that can make it really, really hard for us to crawl your website and result in us kind of being lost within a sea of URLs from your site. Can you clarify the difference in image requirements for Google News? The news article structured data page states one size, and the Google News image help page states another. I took a quick look at this yesterday, and essentially the Google News recommendation has a minimum size of something really, really small. And for the article structured data page, the markup that we use for AMP pages within the, in the news section in the search results, that specifies a bigger size. So for Google News alone, you can definitely use those small pages. If you want to be included in the AMP, in the news section there, then that's something where you'd need to comply with the AMP markup, which requires a larger image. OK, we just have a few minutes left, so maybe I'll just open it up for more questions and comments from you all. What else is on your mind?
I've got another one, John, if that's OK.
Sure.
So our developers here, get back on the subject of 301 redirects, they were saying that a browser will cache a redirect. So once it realizes a redirect, a permanent redirect's in place, it will remember that redirect. And even if I were to change the destination, that it may still remember the original redirect was in place. The question they asked me was, would Google do the same? So once it recognizes a 301, would it then, if I change the destination URL, would it always remember the original one I'd set up?
Probably not. So we tend to retry URLs fairly regularly, not as often as URLs that we know are kind of the destination URLs, but we do retry them regularly. You'll usually see this more visibly when it comes to error pages, for example. We'll know that it's an error page, but we'll still recheck it every couple of months. So that's something where we understand that the web can change. And even though you technically told us this is a permanent redirect and will never change, we will go back and double check that every now and then to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
That's great. And then one other very quick one. So we're an e-commerce site. So one of my challenges is to make a category or a lister page that essentially just has products on. How to make that useful beyond it being a list of products. One thing I've noticed a lot of e-commerce sites doing is dynamically bringing in some key features of the products from product pages onto the lister. So 2 or 3 bullet points. Feels like quite a useful thing to do, but I'd just be interested to know your thoughts on that.
Sure. I mean, anything you can do to make sure that these pages provide unique value of their own, I think that's totally fine.
Fantastic. Thanks very much.
All right. More questions from you all.
I would have one last quick question. We just relaunched Picture Gallery, and basically we've done that for our Austrian domain. And we have millions of pictures, but the thing is we used to have 2 pages, or 2 URLs that would have like the full screen and like a small, more thumbnail type of version of the image, but it would be for that specific image. Now we did the relaunch, we tried to do everything, prepare everything with canonicals from the full screen version to the small one, redirects, everything. Now the whole thing, the problem is we have the same content, the old content on the German version. So what we're seeing is we just get, instead of having the new, better Austrian ones, we have the old German ones. And I don't know what to tell the team. Like, you're going to have to wait 2 weeks until I can tell you what to do, and it's just holding the whole development process back a little bit. And I'm a bit under pressure of telling them, okay, 2 weeks, 1 week.
Okay, so you have the same images on 2 sites, is that correct?
Yes, but for different countries.
Yeah. And are you looking at image search, or is this in web search? Image search.
Both, actually. Like, sometimes, the results show up in both, but primarily image search.
So there are a few things. On the one hand, for images, we don't use the rel canonical. So if you have the rel canonical header in the images themselves, we don't use that. On the other hand, we recrawl images much less frequently than the normal web pages. So if you make any changes with regards to the way your images are embedded on pages, then that's something where you'll probably see quite some time for that to settle down properly. So that's like in a situation where you do one-time move, that's obviously something you kind of have to wait it out until it settles down again. In extreme situations, which we've seen where people append kind of session IDs to the image URLs or dates to the image URLs to make sure that they're constantly refreshed, then sometimes what we'll see is that they're never actually indexed properly. I don't think that's the case in your situation. But especially if you make changes with regards to the landing pages or the image URLs, then that does take quite some time to settle down. One important aspect that lots of people forget is to set up redirects for the image URLs themselves. So if you move the landing pages from one URL to another, and you also change the image URLs, then make sure that the old image URLs actually redirect to the new image URLs. That helps us to kind of pick that up a little bit faster, rather than having to rely on parsing the old, checking the old images, noticing that they're 404, and then finding them again on the new page and kind of building up those signals again. If we can find a redirect for the image URLs, then that makes it a little bit easier.
All right, I hope we did that. I need to check that. Okay, Thank you.
All right. So with that, we're kind of out of time. I notice we still have a bunch of questions left, so I will definitely go ahead and set up new Hangouts for the next time. Not quite sure about the time of day. It seems some of you are still asleep, which is fine with me, because I'm still asleep too.
I thought we did quite well.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of empty compared to other Hangouts, but
quality, not quantity, John.
That's true. All right, we will leave it at this time. That's the phrase of the day. All right. So with that, I'd like to wish you all a great Friday and a great weekend, and hopefully we'll see you again in one of the future Hangouts. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.